Welcome to Rock and Blues Review, where today we're talking to Ian Andrews, who's been called the next generation blues rocker. Welcome, Ian.
Hello, Bob.
So, tell me, you are really well known in the Kitchener, Hamilton, Guelph area, and you're starting to get gigs in Niagara. So maybe you can tell people down here just a bit about yourself.
Well, I love to have a lot of fun when I'm playing music, that's for sure. If you've ever seen me, you've definitely seen me with a big smile on my face while I'm playing, because that's what it's all about. Um, and I love playing in Niagara when I get the chance to. The people there are really wonderful, really great audiences. You all just really get excited for music, and I love that, and that's what really drives us.
Yeah, it's a pretty active scene around here, and we have seen you, and I have noticed you're starting to appear in this area more often. I saw you last time you were at Donnelly's, and you were just at Hallowell's, and you're back at Donnelly's on the 27th of December,
Yeah, 27th of December with Brant Parker and his house band.
right? Now, what's it like jamming as compared to doing your own band?
Well, what's a good way to put this? See, when you're playing with a band, you got to play these arrangements because you've all, I guess, agreed to the arrangements, or um, you know, they're playing the arrangement that you want them to play. And so that's always great. But I find, and you know what, there's a magic to that as well. But I find that when you're playing with, say, a house band in these sort of special guest spots, whether it be Bram Parker or the Coachmen or Steve Grisbrook and Blues, etc., down at the Regency, um, that sort of environment allows for artists, musicians like myself to really express themselves naturally in the moment and really be their most authentic self because they're really just making it up as we go along, right? Is it's we know the song, we know how we play it, but obviously the people you're on stage with in that current moment, they don't actually know the arrangement. If it's blues, well, okay, we could play with the blues, but maybe there's some tricks in there. So they're not going to do exactly the same thing. You can kind of go for it, but sometimes they do their own thing and it takes you to a really crazy, wild place and different things happen, right? A drummer plays slightly different polyrhythms or something uh, underneath everything. And then all of a sudden you've got a whole new groove, which can inspire you, but it just brings another part out of you. So it's
Right,
just got it's got a magic to it. I suppose is the big difference there.
right. And I know it's tougher to play your own original material with a group like that. And I know I've seen that you've played with Tony Springer, Wild T. And I
Yeah.
know that he does not like doing his own tunes when he's jamming with other bands. He kind of insists they really know the material. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean I think it's cool. I mean it can go both ways. So it's like those kinds of gigs, are kind of like it's not a rule, but it's kind of an unspoken rule. And I guess it depends. Um but it's kind of like those sort of things. It's like a no homework thing, for something like that. um but I mean there's always the little poke and the little, hey, like, I'd love to do this song, if you got the time, could you look at it, sort of thing. There's always that too. But I mean, I think it's really great if if a house band is up for learning a song or two. It's kind of difficult when they learn a song and um, it sort of takes the magic out of the thing, right? And if everybody learns a different version or practice it differently, right? It's better for it to be loosey goosey. So I guess you could say, it's not a bad thing to say, hey, uh just check out the arrangement on this. I want to do this.
Right.
But I mean, at the same time, too, you're there to entertain and whatnot, and you want to be accurate. So I think it's important to do that too. But I don't think that it's kind of a tall order to say, hey, here's here. Well, actually, I was going to say 30 songs, but it's it's normally a blues gig. Let's face it, that's like 15 songs with all the guitar solos.
Yeah.
But you take a full show's worth of songs to lift and learn. That's no fun. I think that takes the magic out of it a little bit, but I think it's better to do it the other way because not only does it allow for magic, it keeps you exercised and works you as a frontman or a band leader, and it allows you to conduct the band, and it just kind of it leaves room for a more human sounding that humanity's in there and the humility's in there as well, where those rough spots happen, but it makes so and so smile at so and so. It's just it's I don't know. I kind of like both.
Yeah. Well, I saw one of your bios that you mentioned Deep Purple as a one of your early inspirations, and they're my favorite of all time. And they are big on improv, and of course Richie Blackmore would be. So, do you think that's where you started getting the improv bug?
Um, you know where actually I got it from? I guess I improved a little bit. I grew up in Guelph and there would be like these little jam parties around and stuff. I never went to anything too fancy when I was a kid, but it was just it was around, and you could just improvise and whatever happened, happened. But it was really when I moved to Hamilton. And that was where I started learning the art form of improv and watching what you could do. There was a place down on King William Street, and it used to just be they used to have an open mic. It was ran by a guy named Dave Gould, and at the end of the sort of quote unquote open mic, where it's sign the list and you have your singer songwriters and they do their thing. At the end, it was just a complete open stage, so anybody could walk on stage and anybody could do anything. There was absolutely no rules whatsoever, but you all have to sort of play with each other and express yourself with each other, which I thought was really neat. And it was either really amazing or really weird sounding. Um, but it was where I like to credit that I cut my teeth in blues was actually at Donnelly's Pub. And I got carted out there by a guy named Sam DeRosa, Sweet Sammy D. He's a harmonica player. And I wasn't very good when I first moved to Hamilton. And I just kind of met him at a jam. And he pulled me out to all these different jams to meet all sorts of different people. And that's kind of how I started meeting these different branches on the tree that is my life. And so I met Brant and I saw him and I remember the jam and I remember going to it the first time and I wasn't very good, but I started realizing, okay, these guys are improving and this is crazy. Holy smokes. Like this is some wild stuff here. And he would play a guitar solo and he would just let it rip and then the audience would applaud and go crazy for it. And then I started like, yeah, that was good. And then I started getting sensitive to the energy output of that guitar solo and the energy that the crowd was feeling. So it became my goal when I was going there to try to just close my eyes when I played a guitar solo instead of thinking about it and just doing it. And I remember the very first time I closed my eyes and let myself go and was greeted with this applause at the end of the 24 bars. And that was sort of where I really began learning the art of improvisation. Whoa, I can't speak today. My goodness. We're going to call it improv.
Perfect. Perfect.
But Richie Blackmore was a huge influence on me as a kid. I had a lot of weird influences like that. Being a blues guy, um, Randy Rhoads was also another influence on me. I was really into his work, with Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman and all of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, for me, it maybe sound weird to some people, but the solos and stranger songs like "Place in Line" and "Lazy," you know, I, it caught my attention, that sound, and later I figured out it was bluesy, you know, at the time. But you're young. How old are you?
I'm 33 years of age.
Okay, so you would have. Yeah, a little bit different of influences, but the classics seem to keep coming back. And who would you list among your other influences?
Oh, I mean, it really depends. I mean, I'm constantly influenced by sound and my environment. I mean, there's people I watch and see play, and I go, wow, no, that's a cool sound. Like what a great idea that is. And what a cool approach to that with the guitar. Or because I have a lot of hats I wear. Um, I'll wear, sort of a producer's hat, and I kind of hear it something as a producer and go, okay, wow, that's really neat. The tones that they have and that drum sound is great. And the pocket on that is super nice, and how it fits. I kind of think I have a lot of influences that spark me. So I mean, I guess specifically guitar. I mean, there's all kinds of guitar players. Even just in blues. Um, I love the showmanship and the attack of Albert Collins, and that spontaneous in your face of the wide open reverb soaked guitar amp with a Telecaster. Um, but I love guys like Lonnie Mack too. Lonnie Mack is super cool. Um, and all kinds of guys. Bernard Allison, Luther Allison, those guys are really cool. Um, there's just so many, and then it gets into other guys like oh gosh, who else? I love guys like Edgar Winter. I love Johnny Winter. Um, there's just so much out there, right? I get inspired by so many records. I got a sweet album, sitting on my desk right now.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned those guys because those names come up a lot. I'll tell you right now. I just talked to David Gogo last, and he loves Albert Collins, one of his favorites. And uh, Colin James mentioned Bernard and Luther Allison. Of course, they were pretty tight. And Muggy Doo Leach mentioned those guys too. So it's interesting that the certain names seem to rise to the top all the time.
Yeah, big time for sure. I mean, Bernard is. I mean, Luther was amazing, and what Bernard's doing is great. He's really done some cool stuff with blues, which I think is really hard to do in the modern blues world. Um, there's a lot of sounds to be made, and it's kind of tricky because there is very much like in the rest of music. I see that there's a box that you kind of have to fit in a little bit. It's almost like there's pop blues in a sense,
Hmm.
right?
Right,
And um, I find like Bernard is so creative with some of the stuff he does with his tones and his production, his arrangement, um, his guitar tone, his guitar licks, and just his approach to the blues is really great. Not to mention his voice is fantastic.
right. Well, it's funny because you mentioned, getting better, growing, learning, and paying attention as a producer, and I think those two things go hand in hand because the guys that I see who don't seem to be growing or changing are not listening to other players or not trying to pick up anything new, and that's really important. Did you have that from the beginning?
Yeah, I've always kind of been eager to learn and stuff. And when I was younger, I used to really have like a complex. And it was like I just didn't really believe that I could get any better. I was just a really shy guitar player from Guelph, Ontario, and um, I never even sang before when I was a teenager. I didn't really sing. I wrote songs, but I never really sang. And I think by the time I was about 17 or 18, I was starting to sing by the time I was 17, and singing the songs that I wrote. And then I decided to become a front man. I was about 18 or so. Um, when I think I had my first band when I was a front man. Um, Most ridiculous band name in the world. It was called Cornelius and the Damn Dirty Apes for some reason. Um,
Movie
but
influence,
yeah, yeah, a little bit. And yeah, I was just really, I didn't really think I could grow. Um, but I just kept playing what I played and just did it. And little by little, I just started getting more excited about playing and doing it and just trying to do things. And it's almost like it just started to fade away. And instead of wishing that I could just do something, hoping that one day I could just do something, I just think, okay, you know what? When I get there, I'll get there. I'll do it when I do it. And I'm here now, and this is what I'm passionate about, and this is what I'm working on. And if I really need to have that on guitar, then I will sit down and figure that out. Um, but at the same time too, I used to be a lot more interested in going out and drinking and having fun and playing guitar rather than working on guitar.
Oh, that's the Joe Walsh approach. It works.
It does, yeah. It did wonders for me, right?
Yeah.
And I'll attest that osmosis is a real thing because when you hang out with Brant Parker and those guys long enough, you pick up some licks.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, a couple things. I want to get back to your writing, but first, let's just talk about that. When you go to a show, can you enjoy that show, or are you trying to learn the whole damn time?
I'm definitely enjoying the show for sure. Um, it's almost like a subconscious. It's like a subconscious thing that happens, and sometimes I'll be stopped dead in my tracks and totally just like dumbfounded and like, wow, I can't believe that. But it's really I'm really being impacted by the artists that I'm watching and the band, and I'm really being impacted and taking that in as an experience as a whole. Um, and I guess the osmosis just comes afterwards sometimes, or it just comes out when it comes out. I'm not necessarily just running around ripping off everybody's licks, but
No, no,
uh,
that's not what I'm saying at all.
yeah,
Because I think it's so important. Like, we were with the Canal Bank Shuffle for 20 years, and we brought in some amazing players. And one of the things I noticed was some locals would show up to watch, and many didn't. And the ones who showed up are going places. They're getting somewhere. You know,
yeah,
they took the time to learn and, to pick up ideas.
yeah.
So,
It's true. If you go out, you get exposed to it, right? It was like I was in Guelph, and when I moved to Hamilton, I don't think it was in the water, but I just all of a sudden skyrocketed as a musician, and my skill and in performance too. I had more of a playground. I had more people to watch and to sort of see or be exposed to different ideas and things that would influence me. Watching a guy comfortably move, and then I say, okay, I can do that. Like, why can't I? I can totally do that.
exactly.
Um, it's just seeing those ideas, right? Or you see a band and they got stage props on. Well, I'm going to do that too. Or, just different things like that. We all learn from each other, really.
Yeah. Well, you
And
should.
yeah, and it's how we all advance and how we all get ahead. And I just always learned. I and you know what? Whenever this subject comes up, I always quote Alan Duffy, the late Alan Duffy.
Yeah.
So he told me, um, you know, one day because he really mentored me in a lot of things. Um, and being cool was one of them for sure. And and he said to me, he said, "Brother, stand on the shoulders of giants, and just remember, you're going to be a giant one day too, and that you have to let someone else stand on your shoulders." He
Right.
sounded a lot cooler when he said that. It was probably like, baby, one day you're going to be a giant too, baby. That's what I'm saying. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Alan was great, and certainly going to miss him.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was very cool and a lot of fun. And I want to get back to him too. But you mentioned moving to Hamilton and influences and learning, and you had Steve Strongman and Jack DeKaiser, who you've been with, and both those guys are so incredibly versatile. So
yeah.
that versatility is something that could rub off on you, or you could pay attention to.
Yeah, yeah, the versatility is huge, especially in this day and age of the industry, and the saturation of artists as well. You have to be versatile in your sound. You have to be versatile in the way you operate. You have to be very versatile in the way you perform. Um, there's the list goes on and on for versatility. It's important, and I love watching those guys. They're fantastic. Steve is just there's a great example of versatility where he can go through his different sort of sounds. He can go from performing acoustically, and he's got the harmonica as well, back to his electric. And then just just last was it last year? No, it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he decides he's going to pick up a Fender Stratocaster, and because he's a Gibson guy, or sort of that style of guitar. And lo and behold, he was performing in a very, very renowned tribute to Eric Clapton with Lance Anderson, and just a heck of a lineup. But it was great to watch him play a Stratocaster, and play one of the guitar parts in Layla, and many of the other hits from Clapton's career.
Right. Right. Yeah, we had him a number of times, and I've known him, I've seen him, 20 years ago. But I remember I was blown away when Jeff Healey died, and he filled in for him, because to me that was a complete change of style from what I had seen him do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That would be, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's wild. I grew up on this street in Guelph, and Steve Strongman used to play down the street from me all the time, but I didn't know him then.
Right.
I've had a lot of weird crossovers of connections and worlds colliding, in that regard, where it's just strange. And then because I ended up, of course, playing at this pub as well, for many years, but lo and behold, I grew up there, so it's a neat little crossover connection. It's kind of cool.
Right. Okay, so let's get back to Alan Duffy. Your record, Blues Record of the Year and Hamilton Blues Awards, Foreplay, and
Yeah.
and co-produced by Alan, written by you.
Yeah. Yeah, so we that was my first album, and I remember um it kind of came together with John Fraser, who's a fantastic photographer and a really great renovator. Anybody who's doing home renovations, you should see this guy's Instagram. My goodness, the stuff that he builds and makes, it's incredible. Um he's an artist for sure. He's an artist. He's a contractor, but he's an artist. Um so uh we sort of, I think, really briefly met more online, and I was actually doing this concert in Burlington. I was part of a bill with, I believe, Ginger St. James was the headliner on that. And I can't remember the other band, but it was at the Boston Manor, and John came out to take some photos of me. So we spoke, um, and we just talked, and he just was trying to build something at his place at the time, and wanted to try some recording. And I said, hey, let's build a studio. I'll be your guinea pig. And so that's what we decided to do. Was we kind of started working on this studio that, in a loft apartment above uh, Beasley's Pub in Hamilton on Lock Street. And so it kind of came together, and then, of course, at the time, the Bay City Music Hall was just banging every single Sunday, 250 people. And I remember the time Jack DeKaiser played there, we pushed like 400 people that day. And but that was, Brant Parker and Sean O'Grady, Al Duffy, Bill Hollinati, Dave McMorrow. So they were all there, and then it kind of started as a hangout a little bit afterwards. Um, and then Al and I were kind of friends, and Al sort of took a liking to me, and he just sort of took me under his wing, and that's where I started to grow. So getting into, that's the long version to get to your question. So working in the studio there, in this little thing we kind of made. Alan was sort of the looking after me in that sense, and we both sort of produced it together, and worked with John, and sort of, he was kind of my chaperone, made sure I didn't make anything too ridiculous, and also at the same time he really taught me and showed me a lot of stuff, and he would explain why we do things this way, and no, that's we're not going to do that. This is what peasants do in the studio. you know, this is how we get a good sound, brother. Come on, baby. You
Yeah.
know how he talks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we did that, and yeah, I'm really really thankful. He really helped with a mix and a master on it. Um, and eventually we actually we had to cut it short at John's studio. He had some health conditions come up at that time, and so that was when we switched over to Michael Berthelmer's studio, just a couple blocks up Lock Street in Hamilton, onto another road called Pine Street, and that was where we did some pretty magical sessions in there. Um with Al and Sean, and Brant came in as well, and Greg Briscoe and Bill Hollinati, and yeah, it was a really remarkable time in my life. It's where, I mean, there's where a lot of osmosis happened. I was a sponge in a giant bathtub of knowledge there, um, between everybody. So it was a really great experience for me.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, and all those guys are certainly busy in this area still. And again, I was going to talk about your writing. You mentioned you started young. So, what does that process look like for you?
Um, it varies. It's kind of evolved over the years. I mean, I remember, right, I think I wrote my first song. I was probably like 11, and at the time I couldn't really play anything. I just wanted to write a song, so I wrote this thing. I did, I guess, what I would call creative writing, and intended to write these songs. And I had a little journal when I was like, 8 and 9, and I'd write these things that I called songs, but I sang them in the melody and tunes of already famous songs and stuff, whatever things I heard, but I made up my own sort of lyrics to it. um, and I remember when I was, yeah, probably about 11, I remember writing some very cliche thing. I think it was called Thunder Girl or something. I have no idea where that paper's gone now, but and I remember taking it to my guitar teacher at the time, and I sat down with them, and I brought this in, and I said, "Oh, I wrote this song." And he's like, "Oh, cool! You wrote your first song. That's really awesome." And we sat down, and um, he's like, "Okay, well, how do you play it?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't have, I don't know any chords yet, Bob." Actually, his name was Bob as well. His name was
They
Bob
all are.
Leduc.
They all are.
Yeah. So that was where that kind of started, and then I played in bands as a teenager, just as a very shy lead guitar player that still played with his mouth wide open, catching flies because he had to focus on his power chords. And I I I would write these songs, and we had a singer, and the singer would sing the some of the lyrics, and then eventually I would get into writing my own songs, and it just used to kind of come to me. It was like a line or something in my head. Um and then I would have it. When I was younger, it was more so, I played a cool combination of chords or something like that, and it would just sort of come to me. And I guess when I think about it, the process hasn't changed too much. Um, Sometimes it became a line would come into my head, and it's like I would go into this manic cold sweat because I knew I had something, or I would start massaging it out, and then all of a sudden it just bam, then I would go into that mania where I'm just like, okay, what, wow, okay, we're on to this, and I would start writing. And I've kind of learned different methods of actually putting the pen to paper, having sort of a, much later on I was like, okay, well, maybe you should have a little paper on the side here that you're just writing what the line could be rather than what the line is, so you don't get all confused. And what are you trying to say here? Is that really the adjective you want, or is that just something that sounds cool? And I think for a lot of the songs I was writing, it was more or less coming from a place of, well, that sounds kind of cool, so I'm just going to say that, even though it
Hmm.
may not make sense. There was some of those, um, but I can recall, it was. I guess you know what it's almost like I don't know. It sounds cheesy, but it's almost like channeling. I think Keith Richards said this one time. I'm trying to remember how he put it, but it's just he just you have an antenna on your head, and the way I would say it is you're picking up this transmission that came from somewhere. Um, you know, you pick it up and you try to decipher that transmission as best as you can, and you end up with something pretty good sometimes, or sometimes you totally miss the mark. So it's a really interesting thing to experience, that's for sure. Um, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot.
Well, that's important too. And I'm reading some of the stuff on you, and it's talking about a new sound and new arrangements and new things coming out. Uh, can you give us a hint what that's going to look like?
Absolutely. So some of you might have seen. Um, I've got this sort of new production project. Well, it's more than a project. It's called the Big Bad Blues Show, and we are the Big Bad Blues Band, and it's a seven-piece band with a three-piece horn section that also doubles as a percussion ensemble. So it's a lot of fun because we get into, well, we have congas on stage, and we get into using all sorts of different percussion instruments to really enhance things. But then we've got five-part vocal harmonies and keyboard player, and all of that going on. So it's really an interesting mix of stuff. Our horn section features trumpet, trombone, and tenor sax, and our tenor sax player Kim Regimbol, he doubles as a baritone sax player as well. So he kind of does double duty as the reed master. But he also plays congas, so that's also very cool. So we get into some neat stuff. We go into some New Orleans territory as well, and we do. It's a really cool show. I'm very excited about it, and this really started off as a thought a couple of summers ago, and the thought was just, I really miss actually playing straight up blues and having a saxophone player on stage, and maybe I should just get back to that whole five-piece sound. With the way I used to do it when I had the Smokin' Scoundrels, just that five-piece sound, the blues band with a sax and keys. Um, and so I started that way, and then it started with the saxophone player Brian Chermak, who played on the Foreplay album. He played on the track "I Got a Feeling," which is a very, very beautiful track. He wrote that the intro saxophone, and I wrote the rest of the saxophone on that tune. He's just a really remarkable player. And I thought, well, you know what? I haven't called Brian in years. I'm going to call him up and see what he's doing. So I called him up, and we did a couple of gigs and stuff, and he got sort of busy with life, just some health stuff going on, and spending time with family. So I was having to get subs, and so I was getting a sub. So I'd grab this fella, and then I'd grab this fella, and then all of a sudden I was like, hey, you know what? Um, wouldn't it be cool to have a horn section? I mean, this is very, very brave of me, but uh, okay, well, let's do it. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this thing. So we started it off, and it was originally baritone, tenor, and trombone with Jack Cooper, and Ryan Cassidy was on tenor, and that was sort of the maiden voyage show I did. So eventually, I met Connor Wilds because the three of them actually did a lot of work together as a horn section and some other bands and things like that. So they kind of almost already came as a package. Um, and we all really clicked, and they were all really into it. So I just gave them a little bit more wrapping on the package and called them the Big Bad Brass.
Mm.
So that's kind of how that came about. So we're working as much as we can on this, and we try to perform when we can, and it's our next one is in London at the German Canadian Club through the Great Lakes Blues Society. Um, and in the meantime, we've been just doing a little bit of recording and just kind of fooling around a little bit in our rehearsal studio. And we discovered that our rehearsal studio has totally incredible sound and can manage to have all of us playing at the same time with still keeping good studio sound. So we've stumbled onto some recording and some stuff that sounds good. So there's going to be a single that's going to be getting released very soon. We're just going to finish mixing it. I was actually playing a teaser of it on Patrick Porter's show just on Saturday with Patrick and Joni, and it's a cover of the old blues standard "Every Day I Have the Blues." So there's a version of that that T-Bone Walker does, and I decided that I was going to sort of bring that back to life again and add my little bit of edge to it. So that's where that kind of came about.
Well, it all sounds great. Sounds like you're on the right track. And uh, we're almost out of time. So, it's interesting that you mentioned all that and how it's coming together and kind of how you got there. Because the word I keep saying describing you is conviction. I've seen it many times talking about you. So I think that you're proving that, and congratulations on that. And we're looking forward to seeing you at Donnelly's in a couple of weeks. And thank you for doing this.
Of course, thanks for having me, Bob. It's a real pleasure to get to chat with you as well, because you know you're no slouch in in the music business, and I really appreciate your interest in talking to me as well, and just sort of hearing my story and you know what I got to say and hear me be excited about what I'm doing.
Well, that's the key, being excited, and you certainly got that. There was other things we could talk about, and maybe we will in the future. So thanks again so much, and we'll talk.
Thanks a lot. Take
All
care,
right.
Bob.
Take care.